I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as lead minister here at First Parish in Concord. Welcome to all joining us both here in our historic sanctuary and also over Zoom to gather in worship is a sacred act. And your presence among us is a blessing. We are glad, grateful that you are here. First Parish in Concord is a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and love lies at the center of our faith. We covenant to grow spiritually and ethically together as we adapt to a changing world. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life. In this congregation, we believe in democracy and affirm that lives matter as we embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. If you are visiting or newer to the congregation, we extend more greetings to you. Each week, a representative of our governing board is available to answer questions, and today I believe our person is Kristen Moore. Is that right? Kristen had a very busy day yesterday, which I'll get to in a moment. So, hey, Susan C. from the governing board. Thanks for being here. Today, and I might have misread it. So Susan can be available after worship and during coffee hour to answer questions that you may have. Ushers are available at the rear of the sanctuary and can provide assisted listening devices, play packets for young ones, directions to the restroom, or our wiggle room downstairs where little ones can play as the service is streaming. Please join us if you are here in the building. Immediately following the service for coffee hour in the parish hall downstairs. There is a colored bulletin with your order of service where you'll find all of the week's announcements. And I have a few additional items that I wanted to uplift this morning. We are offering a newcomers meet and greet downstairs in the parlor at 11:30. The parlor is the room by the side door with the big fireplace. If you are new or new-ish, please join me and I believe Sarah Ballard from the Welcoming Committee will be with us, and Dawn Van Patten, our Assistant Director of Religious Education. And we'll have some time for conversation, questions, and light refreshments. The membership book will be available for those who may wish to officially sign onto our rolls. I'm going to take a little bit of time this morning for shout-outs, shouting out some of the amazing volunteer effort that happens here at this time of year. First, Ellie Whitney and the Flower Committee for decking our halls and doors and steps so beautifully, bringing the holiday spirit into our building. David Wisniewski has been playing double duty and was a big help, I understand, hanging the wreaths and helping out with sextoning duties while also helming the tech desk. He's here today doing that. I would also want to give a shout out to Barry Kopp and Doug Baker, who have been a huge help with coffee hour and other event needs during this transitional time. Speaking of holiday spirit, I had the incredible delight of experiencing my first ever children's holiday crafts workshop at First Parish, which I'm told is a 45-year running tradition. I want to give hearty thanks to Kristen Moore and Jeannie, sorry Jeannie, I don't know your last name, I'm still waiting. Williams, Jeannie Williams. And all the volunteer elves who made the magic happen, and all the children and families who brought their creativity and energy. It was amazing. Finally, it's a pleasure to welcome to worship the Lincoln Ringers under the direction of Diane Burke. We're in for a real holiday treat, and we're so glad that you're here with us this morning for worship. Phew. Okay, it's time to worship. Let us begin with song. Anderson is going to help us with our opening hymn, Number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
Everyone, how are we doing today? All right, so this morning we're going to sing a little song called This Little Light of Mine. And this song is a song that I sing every single day when I'm driving to work. Because I'm a first grade teacher. But also, too, at this time, this is a song that reminds us of how we need to bring our light to this world that is so needed today. So please, join me, rise if you are able. This little light of mine.
If we want there to be peace in the world, we have to be brave enough to soften what is rigid in our hearts, to find the soft spot and stay with it. We have to have that kind of courage and take that kind of responsibility. That's the true practice of peace. May this time of waiting inspire our courage. May we find the soft spot in the pressures of this season and stay with it as we discern our way forward. May we be filled with love and kindness. May we be at ease and discover the true practice of peace within us so that there might be peace in the world. As we kindle the flames of our chalice and Advent candles, please join in reciting our unison reading for the season. The words are on the screens and in your order. I will light candles this Christmas, candles of joy despite all sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage where fear is ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace, great ease and heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all year long. I think I mentioned double duty earlier, and I'm doing kind of multiple duty today. So I'm going to take a sip of water and then come down to tell a time for all ages. This is a story that feels like it needs to be told, not up here. So I'll be right down. Great. So, many of the grown-ups who stay and worship in the sanctuary throughout the service have probably come to realize that I do like to tell stories. And I'm pretty good at telling a certain kind of stories about my own life. So I have another one today, and it's one that I especially wanted to hear, to share so that younger ones present with us today could hear it. It's a story from when I was a little girl. When I was a little girl growing up in a not too far away town called Stoneham, I had a reputation in my neighborhood. Just about every kid and every grown-up knew me as the girl who cried. A lot. Like a lot. My big brother Robbie used to lead the older kids in the chant, Jenny is a crybaby, Jenny is a crybaby. Even my little sister Katie joined in, but she actually was a baby and couldn't say the word quite right. So she called me a crybaby. I didn't like being teased that way, so I cried more. Of course, all people cry a lot when we are babies.
And toddlers, we're supposed to, before we have words, we cry to let grown-ups know that we are hungry or sleepy or hurt or scared and need help. As we grow bigger, we don't have to cry so much to let grown-ups know that we need help because we can tell them with our words. As we grow up even more, we learn to help ourselves when we are hungry and sleepy and hurt. We can get our own snack and put ourselves to bed and find the Band-Aid when we scrape our knees. We don't need to cry to get help with those things, though sometimes we still might cry a little bit. As I was growing up, my mom noticed that I didn't seem to cry less as I got bigger. Maybe more. I cried a lot. My mom couldn't figure out why. I often wasn't hungry or hurt or scared or tired when I cried. I was just sad. So my mom took me to our pediatrician, Dr. Katz, or as I used to call him, Dr. Kitty. After checking me over, Dr. Kitty said that he didn't think anything was wrong with me. He thought I was just the kind of person who cries a lot, who likes to cry a lot. and I probably always would. Dr. Kitty wasn't wrong. I did like to cry when I was a young girl. Not always. I didn't like to cry when I was hurt or tired or scared. But I did like to cry when I was sad. Like when I had to say goodbye to my grandpa at the end of a visit, because my grandpa was my very favorite person in the whole world. Or when I wanted to play with my friends in the neighborhood, but I felt too shy to ring their doorbells. Or when I wanted to stay up late to watch a movie on TV like my older brother got to do, and my parents said no. When these things made me sad, crying felt good. It made me feel warm and cozy inside, and also in a strange way, powerful. When I've cried, I felt a kind of love for myself. Even better, when I was really sad and I cried, one of the grown-ups who loved me usually came to me to give me hugs and comfort me. That felt warm and cozy too, and powerful. That felt like love. Dr. Kitty was right about another thing. Even now that I am all the way grown up, I still like to cry. Not as often. I don't usually cry anymore when I'm hungry or tired, or when I scrape my knee, or when my brother teases me, and he does still tease me. But I still do cry when I am sad, especially when I have to say goodbye to a person I love very much, like my grandpa. At those times, I still like to cry. Crying still feels warm and cozy, especially when a friend who cares about me comes to be sad with me. That feels powerful. That feels like love, because it is. And that's the end of my story, which means it's time for religious exploration to begin. And today's focus is celebrating light, the light within each of us, the light of community, and the significance of light in this season. All kinds of fun is to be had, including making sun catchers, shadow puppets, and blanket forts. So at this time, kindergartners through high schoolers are invited to follow Dawn, Anderson, and Jean to the Emerson Room. Please join together in our song. Each Sunday, we set aside time in our worship for a ritual of empathy, when we bear witness to the most meaningful passages in our life and feel together in joy and sorrow, grief and hope. In this way, we deepen the wellspring of compassion in our hearts, that we may meet each other and those in our wider world in a spirit of love and care and peace. This morning, I've been asked to share that Jeffrey Lloyd had successful kidney transplant surgery on November 26th. He is now recovering at Brigham and Women's Hospital from post-op complications. We wish Jeff a speedy recovery so he can safely return home. And cards are welcome. Rose and Chris Kratzley request that we please keep their daughter Aria in our prayers. She's been navigating some health challenges and is recovering from surgery at Children's Hospital in Boston. Erica Ide, the mother of Reverend Elizabeth Ide, our acting minister for congregational care, passed away yesterday morning after a long period of illness and decline. Elizabeth and her siblings and their family will miss her. Please hold Elizabeth and her family in your care during this tender time of grief. We feel with our friends and companions here in our spiritual home as they recover and heal and grieve. And here we open our hearts wider to feel for the suffering of distant neighbors across this globe, strangers, but no less our human kin. Let us open our hearts to witness the staggering suffering of our human siblings in Gaza, displaced, unhoused, hungry, wounded, grieving, and fearing for their lives every second of every day. Let us bear witness to the suffering of all hostages held in Gaza and their families who have lost count of days as they ache for a receding dream of home and reunion. Let us open our hearts to witness all who suffer the ravages of war and terror in Ukraine, Sudan, Syria, Haiti, and every corner of the planet where violence reigns. Our hearts ache and break for a world that has lost its way and is stuck in the mire of division, indifference, intolerance. May our witness be the place where we begin. May the rising of compassion from the wellspring of our hearts inspire our actions for peace in our own selves, in our homes, in our communities, and in our beautiful, broken world. Into this space, made meaningful and sacred by our presence together, I invite each and all of you to briefly share the names and concerns that you are holding today, either by typing them into the chat or speaking them quietly aloud in the space you are in. We acknowledge and hold in our hearts all the intentions and prayers spoken and unspoken among us. I'd like to offer a prayer from the Reverend Annie Forster. At the center of the gathered community dwells the holy. We are the prayer. Each and all, one by one, we come to this place, whole and broken, commencing and concluding, laughing and weeping. We fill the circle with our breath. The prayer rises on our very breathing together. The circle will not, cannot go on forever, yet this circle will never die. What each of us finds here is what we are not. It makes us whole. It gives us strength to go out in the world beyond this holy community, beyond this sacred space. Spirit of life and love, where we meet is sacred space, and we are inspired by one another's presence. At the center of the gathered community dwells the holy. We are the prayer, each and all. Amen. I invite you to join in a moment of shared and sacred silence, to be present to what you feel and to what we feel together. Each month we share our plate with an organization, a worthy organization that serves our shared faith values. And for this month, the organization we're sharing our plate collection with is Worthy Now, a prison ministry network of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation without walls, and this organization and this initiative is especially dear to me as I had the great privilege and a transformative experience serving as a learning fellow for the Worthy Now prison ministry program. And Susan C. is the member involved with the organization who recommended it as a beneficiary. So I'm going to turn the pulpit over to Susan.
Good morning. Is the mic at the right place? Okay. The song There But For Fortune was written by Phil Oakes in 1963. I first heard it on my Joan Baez album in 1964. It took my breath away. I listened to it over and over. I had given up on the Presbyterian religion that I was raised in, but this song, the first verse goes, how does it go? Somebody help me. You know this song. I'll come back to it later. Show me the prison, show me the jail, show me the man whose life has gone stale. I'll show you a young man with so many reasons why. There, but for fortune, go you or I. It became my religion, the social action, the awakening within me because of that song. When I was a mother of adult children in college, I often thought again of that song, those words, "There but for fortune go you or I." My children were grown, launched, doing beautifully with friends, and goals and dreams, laughter and love. I often wondered how I got so lucky, how our family had escaped drugs, addiction, crushing failures, car accidents, and all the dozens of other things that could have changed their lives. Then, when my son was in his mid-30s, we learned that he was a functioning alcoholic, deeply addicted. The state of Texas learned it too when he was arrested for a DUI. A first offender, he was sentenced to 6 months in a state-run rehab facility. After 6 months, he was released. Addicted to the opioids he was prescribed by the facility due to an injury suffered in the facility. Fortune was no longer with us. He died less than 3 months after being released. 2 years ago, still struggling with grief and trying to come to terms with all the what-ifs and guilt and shame, I had some sessions with Liz Weber. In our last session, she suggested I might find an outlet for healing with the UU Church of the Larger Fellowship's Worthy Now Prison Ministry Program. I had never heard of this program. But that summer, I found their website, felt called to participate, applied, and after a few months, I was matched as a pen pal with a young man in prison in Texas. That first match ended, and I now have a pen pal incarcerated in a prison in Michigan. He can minister to me, and I can minister to him. It is a relationship that is as beneficial to me as it is to him. He is inherently worthy right now, exactly as he is. Most CLF members in prison are new to Unitarian Universalism and learned about CLF from friends or cellmates. With no access to the web or UU Sunday services, people who are incarcerated can only learn about UU from the mailings sent by the Worthy Now Prison Ministry staff or by their pen pals. The Worthy Now program has been growing by leaps and bounds, all the while based on a model which started with 20, then 200, then 500, then over 1,000 UUs currently experiencing incarceration. There are over 100 incarcerated UUs waiting for pen pals. Recently, budget cuts have reduced staff, cut salaries, reduced some program resources for incarcerated UUs, and directly affected the prison ministry program. There but for fortune go you or I. The need is great. Your offerings are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for your powerful personal testimony about the transformative ministry of the Worthy Now program. And thank you all for your generous giving. I have a reading this morning. You've been hearing a lot of my voice. We're going to do the reading in a different way, actually. It's a video. The reading is called On Empathy, and it's from a talk given by Brené Brown. It's a brief animated video. So here comes our reading.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection.
An audio issue.
Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that.
You know what? You probably
Empathy
can get the
is
message.
feeling with
All right,
people.
let's keep going.
And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Who doesn't like a good silent film? Especially when it's 3 minutes, it sure felt a lot longer without words. So ends our reading. On Christmas Eve this year, my daughters and mother, siblings, in-laws, nieces, nephew, cousins, aunt, uncle, and several close friends will gather at my sister Kate's house for our family's 30th annual Christmas Eve Yankee Swap gift exchange. I won't be there. I have another place to be on Christmas Eve. That just goes with the vocational territory of ministry. I'm okay with it. Our family's Yankee Swap is raucous and loud. With a few exceptions, we're not a terribly athletic bunch, but for some reason, many of our clan treat our annual Yankee Swap like a competitive sport, competing not just to take home the best gift of the night, but especially for bragging rights. The real winner is the person who gives the evening's most coveted item. Some of us will go to great lengths to earn this honor. One year, our friend David showed up with a gift-wrapped crate of live lobsters. We take the rules seriously. It can get heated. Words have been exchanged. Tears have been shed. All in good fun, of course, but the introverts among us, myself included, often need to retreat outside for air, maybe even sit out a year or two. The minister in me wonders, what's this all about? Why such an intense desire to bring the best gift? Live lobsters aside, I doubt many of us could name past winning gifts with much specificity. Often, it's nothing more exciting than the latest device charging gadget. Honestly, why so much fuss? Maybe I'm thinking too hard about this. Remember, I am a minister, but I suspect it has something to do with a deep-seated human desire to be wanted, accepted, and valued for the inner gifts we have to give the world and to each other. And with our fear that those inner gifts won't always be wanted, accepted, or valued. Our hidden worry that our truest gifts of self may not be good enough. Maybe. That has been true for me at times in my life. I spent a long time worrying that my gifts for intimate conversation and deep connection didn't seem to be wanted by my peers, and that my language and writing abilities didn't seem to fit the needs of the world and the demands of our economic system. What was I going to do with that master's degree in English literature? Eventually, I made my way to seminary, and during that time, learned a lesson that changed everything. I learned to let go of that fear of rejection and unworthiness. It's not that I discovered any new or different gifts within myself more suited to the world and other people's expectations. Rather, I learned about the essential gift that we all carry and that we all can give, and that is always wanted and needed, the gift of presence. I heard the lesson first from the writer and speaker Brené Brown, whose perspective comes out of her social work background, and really, you should watch the video. I'll send it to you so you can get the words. Here's one thing she says in that bit. Rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. Rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. I learned the lesson again in my studies when I read the work of Henry Nouwen, a renowned theologian, professor, writer, and ordained Catholic priest who wrote, "When we honestly ask ourselves which persons in our lives mean the most to us, We often find that it is those who, instead of giving much advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a gentle and tender hand. As I continued my seminary journey, Nouwen's wisdom echoed in the writings of Quaker spiritual teacher Parker Palmer. Here's the deal, Palmer writes. The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is. We have no fix or save to offer those who suffer deeply, and yet we have something better. Our gift of self in the form of personal presence and attention, the kind that invites the other's soul to show up. I hear the same echo in Mary Oliver's exhortation from her famous poem, Wild Geese. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. More recently, I've been revisiting the wisdom of psychiatrist and writer M. Scott Peck in his breakout book from the late 70s, I think, The Road Less Traveled, and that echo sounded again. The principal form that the work of love takes is attention. When we love another, we give them our attention. By far the most common and important way in which we can exercise our attention is by listening. What makes something better is connection. The persons who mean the most to us are the ones who have chosen to share our pain and touch our wounds with a gentle and tender hand. The human soul wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is. The principal form that the work of love takes is attention. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Do you hear the echoes? I have come to embrace the wisdom shared by these many teachers as truth, but not because they spoke their words on the TED stage or published them in fancy books with impressive credentials next to their names in the bylines. I've come to accept their wisdom as truth because their teachings align with real experiences from my own life and encounters with other lives. As brilliant as Brown and Nouwen and Parker and Oliver and Peck are, the most memorable teachers who taught me the same wisdom are regular people of all ages and backgrounds with no special training or expertise, just people with hearts and souls that long to connect, people with little lights inside. This morning, I'd like to share a few of those stories with you. The first might be familiar. It's about a young girl named Nora Wood, whom I never met, but who made national headlines when she forged an unexpected friendship with an 81-year-old widower named Dan Peterson. I first heard the story of Nora and Dan on WBUR's Kind World podcast several years ago, and it has stayed with me ever since. The day Nora met Dan was a special day, her 4th birthday. She was happily scanning the grocery store aisle from her perch in a shopping cart steered by her mother. In front of the dairy case, she caught a glimpse of a sullen, gray-haired man. I thought he needed a friend, she told the reporter, because he was sad. Understanding that Dan was down in a valley of despair, Nora shined a light in his direction. "Hi, old person," she chimed out loud. "Today's my birthday." Tickled by her sweetness, Dan chatted with Nora for a few minutes. She asked him for a birthday photo and reached out for a hug. Nora could sense that Dan was sad, but she couldn't know that he was utterly despondent with grief after losing his wife 6 months earlier. According to the reporter, a darkness had settled over Dan that he couldn't seem to escape. Dan was in a deep and dark hole, alone and hopeless, until Nora climbed down a ladder to be with him in his sadness. Nora's mom, Tara, posted the photo of the two of them to Facebook, and a mutual friend recognized Dan. She commented that it was the first time that she had seen him smile since his wife had died. Tara understood that something special had transpired between her daughter and the stranger. Moved by Dan's grief, she arranged to bring Nora to visit him. From that first moment in the grocery store, a lasting friendship bloomed. Dan was no longer in the valley. When Nora brought the light of her presence to Dan, he rediscovered the light in his own life. Nora got me out of the loop, gave me something to live for, he said. It's like the sun came out, you know? Do you know? Have you been in the loop? In a dark hole or a deep valley? All alone? I know. The deepest valley I have known is the one I landed in after the birth of my younger daughter, Carly, 18 and a half years ago, when postpartum depression hit me hard. I shared this story several weeks ago in worship, and I spoke to the healing power of my sister Kate's presence. Kate, my next teacher. She was the one who climbed down to be with me in the sacred space of my despair, who called me night after night, who listened and stayed with me in the darkness until I was able to climb out of that deep hole and into the light of healing. During my chaplaincy internship at St. Vincent Hospital in Worcester, I met my third teacher, a patient named Sean. At the start of the unit, the new chaplain interns preoccupied ourselves with tools of the trade, cures, solutions, sources of wisdom and advice, prayer books, Bibles, referral lists, anointing oil, anything to keep the suffering of our patients at a safe clinical distance. I quickly learned from my patients that our toolkit was rarely, never wanted or needed. What they wanted and needed was our presence. I learned this lesson most poignantly from Sean, whom I met each week on the dialysis unit. Sean was 45 years old at the time with end-stage renal disease. He was my most enthusiastic patient, always eager for a visit, playful and kind, though often evasive in his sharing. He cryptically alluded to the specter of his looming mortality and to his past struggles, the racism, violence, and addiction that landed him first in a prison cell and then on the dialysis unit. Our conversations were sometimes stilted, but Sean always asked me to come back. I couldn't quite figure out why until our last visit, when Sean revealed his reason and taught me a lesson that I've been carrying and will carry throughout my ministry. He said he felt like he had a light bulb inside of him, and that when I showed up and listened to him, just listened, and cared about what he had to say, remembered the little details of our previous conversations, he felt the wattage of his inner light increase. Those were his words. The wattage of his inner light increased. A few years later, I learned Sean's lesson again from 3 Polish teenagers. I had tuned into MSNBC for the latest reports on the war in Ukraine. The program featured an interview with 3 students at a Warsaw high school that had recently welcomed young Ukrainian refugees. Natalia Mazurik, the first student to speak, had this to say: sometimes presence is the most that we can give, and the most important thing they can get from us. Her peers went on. They need friends. They want to talk. Tell me about despair, and I will tell you mine. Sometimes presence is the most important thing that we can give and that they can get from us. Rarely can a response make something better, says Brené Brown. What makes something better is connection. With nothing but our presence, we can make the sun come out for a stranger. We can light the way to a sister's recovery. We can turn up the wattage of a suffering patient's inner light. And we can shine the light of hope for our imperiled neighbors. There is power, like real power, almost like electricity, wattage, in the connections we make with each other. It's a power that goes both ways. When we offer up our presence in love and compassion, we reap the gift of connection as much as we give it. When we brighten the lives of our friends and neighbors, we increase our own wattage too. Nora taught me this, and Kate and Sean and Natalia. Who are your teachers, I wonder? Each of us has this need for presence, and each of us has the power to give it. No matter our age or status or education or accomplishments or skills, each and all. So let your little light shine, my friends. There might be someone down in a dark hole or a deep valley trying to get home. Amen. How incredibly lovely. It was so beautiful. Thank you. Our closing words are familiar words from our hymnal, number 447, Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And as we go forth, may we honor those who have lighted the flame within us, and may we seek to light the flame within those who need your and our presence. Blessed be. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn. It's number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Nice, Simon. Thank you. Let us now close our worship in the way that is traditional for this congregation. I will extinguish the chalice while you give and receive the unison benediction. Go out into the world in peace.
Courage, hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
Please be seated to enjoy the postlude.
Thank you.